This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com in review. What I'm looking at today is 2019's Terminator Dark Fate. And this is probably one of the better, if not best, sequels to the original Terminator. And I'm sort of including T2 in that, if only because I haven't seen it in a while. I don't remember it being that great, though I do have it on video, and I'll give that another look in a few days. In any case, this is actually a pretty good movie, though there are problems with it. It deals with alternate timelines, which is a popular trend in the Terminator movies, and it's actually logical based upon the way these movies work. The only problem with the way the Terminator movie deals with it is that it has alternate timelines, but it's always the same movie. Things shift in little ways, such as like the Terminator will be female, or the Terminator is Asian, or in the case of Terminator Dark Fate, the Terminator is Hispanic or Latino. This is kind of dumb, to be totally honest. It's taking the same story and repeating it. And that's not to say you can't do that, because lots of movies do. But in this case, it's so blatantly obvious they're doing that. Take Skynet, replace it with Legion, which is a cyber terrorism AI. It's the same thing. You may be changing the name, but you aren't changing the essential concept. And this is the problem. You can do, I hope you can do other things with it, otherwise this franchise is truly dead. Just do other things with it. Stop telling the same story so blatantly. It would probably go a lot further to saving this franchise. Another problem is that Terminator Dark Fate, everything has to be spectacular in terms of its stunts. If you recall the original Terminator, now keep in mind the budget of the original Terminator compared to Terminator Dark Fate was micro-budgeted. But it's just the idea that this movie cost almost $200 million. Now, if this budget had been slashed, let's say to 120 million, there would have been less in the way of pyrotechnics, but there would have been more, I think, in the way of a better picture, because they would probably have compensated somewhat by just having a more engaging and interesting story than they had. Besides physical stunts, as in with cars and shooting, the amount of stunts in that movie were relatively minor. It wasn't an action-heavy film in that sense. While Terminator Dark Fate, all it is action. There are a few slow moments, granted, some of them actually touching and or amusing. But it doesn't change the fact that every time you hit somebody, they flip 5 times. It's like, why is that happening? Can't you just punch someone and they just fall over? Why does it have to be everything is tossing and flying through the air and stuff? It's tiring. And I'm reasonably certain most physical bodies, as in people, don't respond that way to punches. You don't punch them and they suddenly fly 3 feet in the air and somersault while they're doing it. It doesn't work that way, and this happens a lot in this movie. By which I mean, I wouldn't want to see the Terminator or the enhanced person who also goes back in time, a new twist, a logical one, but new, which is appreciated. I wouldn't want to see them punch through somebody, which is more likely to happen than a person's body spinning in the air under impact, like they do in this movie at numerous times. But it just gets kind of boring. There's some great action set pieces in this movie, but they're action for action's sake, not because we needed these things to actually happen via the story. And as I said, that story is not particularly great. It is just Terminator. It has a more feminist slant to it, and frankly, I don't care so much about that. Though to have Linda Hamilton say the word womb is the weirdest thing, and just sounded really out of place. But I don't necessarily care about that. If you give me a good movie, I don't care if it's from a more feminist point of view. Honestly, it doesn't bother me. But the fact that this movie is just action beat after action beat is bothersome. As I said, Terminator Dark Fate is a pretty good movie overall, but it suffers from what I call Transformers fatigue, in the sense that there have been so many mediocre, none of the Terminator sequels were bad, by the way, but they were mediocre. They were repeating the story with little alterations to make it seem interesting. And this has to stop with the Terminator franchise. And I know it's on ice for now, as it should be, but I think it could be revisited. Perhaps by using the original Terminator as a starting point, but not retelling this story again and again and again. The stakes are always so remarkably high with these Terminator movies. They need to just stop doing that. I think the Sarah Connor Chronicles, which I believe was on Fox in the mid-90s, maybe late 80s, that had the right idea. Make these stories smaller. Either change the story or go deeper into the story, but stop telling the same story again and again and trying to pass it off as new. And that's a pity for this movie because it was directed by the same guy who directed Deadpool, and he's really talented. And this movie, in some ways, deserved better than it received. And this movie needed to just tell its own story and to stop mimicking the other 4 or 5 movies in this trilogy, which it doesn't do. I don't wish ill on any movie, really, in the sense that it takes hundreds, if not thousands of people, from people who work actually on the movie itself to people involved in various departments to make these things a reality. It's not a great thing to see all that effort come to naught. But at the same time, I guess it's like steering a ship, like the Titanic, if you will. If you're going to do that, you have to have an idea of your course in mind and to choose a captain who can best guide your ship to its destination. Tim Miller is a talented director. There's no doubt in my mind about that, but I don't think he was necessarily the right person to helm this project. His background in special effects means that he's not afraid to use them. Though the problem with that is that Miller wasn't afraid to use special effects. In fact, he used them at any available opportunity he could, even when they weren't necessarily needed. He did it because movie and because I can, because I have a huge budget. That's not good. And another thing, I honestly think Terminator Dark Fate is worth seeing. It's a little long. It comes in at like 2 hours and change, and you feel it. It's not, you're not going to fall asleep, but I actually stopped watching halfway, watched the next piece of it the next day, because it's interesting, just not interesting enough to engage you for 2 hours. Though it's worth seeing. It's not a bad movie, though using the same formula again and again and calling it new doesn't work. We've reached bottom as far as the Terminator franchise goes. And I'm not saying it's the worst of them, because it's not. Though what I am saying is that it is not a profitable franchise anymore. So at some point in the future, I hope they reboot it, because it deserves that, and it can be done well. We just haven't seen too many examples of it. This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com and Review. Peace.